Truthfully, what happens is, as children grow up, we start to educate them progressively from the waist up. And then we focus on their heads and slightly to one side.
I think in the old days, you were better off. Because nowadays, they're all specialists. Everyone's becoming better and better. And less and less. And eventually someone's going to be superb. Like nothing.
Our education system has mined our minds in the way that we've strip mined the earth for a particular commodity. And for the future, it won't serve us. We have to rethink the fundamental principles on which we're educating our children.
We're not here to tell everybody that they're wrong and we're right. We're not saying that we have all the answers, but we'd like to present a different way of looking at it.
Hello listeners and welcome to episode 46 with myself, Chris J. Bradshaw, and special guest, although maybe not so special now. You've had a couple, so I'll call you a guest.
I feel so loved.
Yes, well, the researchers like you. Yes, episode 46, and Alex, we're doing a few podcasts around how ignorant you are, and not, of course, just yourself, the world as a whole, and misconceptions, and all this kind of... Well, it's very hard to find the truth nowadays, isn't it? And we see one thing that says maybe coffee's good for your health, and another thing we read, coffee's bad for your health, and it was all these kind of things, just an example. But the point is, what we're doing is we're framing this around the website, gapminder.org, listeners. It's a website that preaches trying to find the truth, so to speak, from fact-based evidence. And what it's done is it seems to have linked up the 17 United Nations sustainable goals for a better world in the future, hopefully as soon as possible, because things are a little bit out of sync, aren't they, at the moment. And a few podcasts, we take a topic each time around one of these goals, and we answer the 6 questions, of which there are 3 potential answers, and we talk about it. And so today's topic revolves around what?
So it's all to do with good health and well-being.
Right, which is a nice topic. What I would also wanted to say here, because we're thinking, talking about this, don't we, Alex, is to those listeners out there now who are thinking, what are these pair of idiots doing, discussing these far-reaching worldviews, and whether, we don't say United Nations to make us special in any ways, in fact, quite from it, we're just using this as a platform for thinking.
Correct. Yes, I mean the website. It seems really good so far. I mean, there's certainly some topics and some questions where we've been a bit, they've interesting choice of words, or
yes,
but the key thing is there are common misconceptions and certainly topics that we just don't think about. I mean, certainly some of these questions I've never thought about in my life.
Yeah. And so if you're a teacher or you're just interested in listening to China Jedi, which I, of course, hope you are, or you just want a little bit of fun, then stay with us for the next 20 minutes to 30 minutes, wherever you may be in the world. So, also, I guess in terms of facts, you have to question everything, and a lot of evidence that we're getting for these questions do come from specific countries that obviously offer up their data, and you then have to ask the questions, don't you? Well, are those countries offering up the same data? So
we're tying it on perfectly with the last that.
Oh, you're talking about the US elections, are you? Oh, the data's coming out, right? Okay,
not that one.
Okay,
we're not going to have those conversations again.
Fraud.
Yes. So we sort of bring back onto the last episode. We sort of stopped recording when we started looking through that last question in more depth, and we had a really interesting question. Can you trust the data? And there was a question that was on the actual website afterwards, and naturally would say yes, we can trust the data, etc. However, we immediately afterwards we started talking about it, and we are essentially it's saying, of course, we can trust those millions of thousands of people who are in this big network collecting all this data from every different country, etc. And just it's such a massive thing. And as we know, there's that whole mainstream media factor. There's so many. You got to take everything with a pinch of salt.
And a big lot of Himalayan pink salt, I have to say, because I like that. But I would say don't take this as fact at all, even though we are giving you facts. And so, I mean, as many people say, Alex, do your own research. And really, this is not what we're putting this show out there for. It's just a bit of discussion, flick some switches that may not be switched on at the moment in your heads of interest. Whatever you think of the United Nations, these 17 sustainable goals, if you haven't seen them, check them out, because they are quite interesting. And I've been talking, Alex, as well, about how maybe we can feed them into our students and things like that through the, outside of the curriculum programs, and just a kind of a face of real world stuff that's going on. So
absolutely, and this one I'm personally invested in this goal. So good health and well-being.
Yes.
First question. So what happened to the global suicide rate in the last 20 years? So
global suicide rate, what happened to it?
So, has it decreased about 25%?
Yeah, I hope it's died a bit.
Has it stayed the same? Or has it increased by 25%?
Wow, that's interesting.
So, has it increased by 25%, decreased, or stayed the same?
Okay, can I just say, knowing old Gapminder, this website...
You know them personally, do you?
No, but I'm starting to know the idea behind it. I get a feeling for it. And it really is about misconceptions and showing the world to be better than we actually feel it is. And there's a point in that, if there's truth in it. And again, we've already talked about what is the truth, what is the fact. And so what I'm going to say here is my misconception and my ignorance, clearly Gapminder are going to find this gap in my understanding of the world, is that I think suicide rates have gone up. The reason I would say they've gone up is because I think life today, in a way, is a lot more stressful. We have, even go to children now in high school, teenage suicide rates, and I might be ignorant to this, but have gone up a hell of a lot since the social media influx, where you get people liking your photos instead of a few friends, it's now millions. And so this is why I think this is...
Even in education. I mean, nowadays, certainly if we think about, I can only speak in my experience as teaching in England, but because of the Key Stage 2 SATs and obviously the new GCSE, the new schemes of work that were introduced, mental health within children was sort of the age was becoming lower and lower and actually entering primary schools. Students from primary school are starting to experience mental health issues. So anyway, back to the main question now. So,
suicide deaths, have they gone up or down or whatever? So what's the answer again?
So in the last 20 years, has it increased by 25%?
Gosh,
decreased by 25%, or stayed the same?
It's a lot, isn't it? 25%.
I think we both know
it's going to be
the answer.
The same, isn't it? Or gone down.
I think we both know it's going to go down because of the nature of this website. The bit I'm going to question is when it says rate. When it says rate, what is it comparing? Because is it the number of deaths per births? Is it the number of deaths compared to the population of the world? When they say rate,
I'm sure it'd be how many people are committing suicide.
How many people are committing suicide each year? Is it that number?
Yeah.
But the other thing as well, like we've got to think about as the population increases, there's lots of factors to bear in mind.
All right, well let's see. I reckon it's going up by 25% because
do you think it's
morbid.
Do you think it's increased?
Yeah.
I think it's decreased.
Yeah.
So let's find out. So it had decreased.
Yeah. Well, we know it's fudginess. Go on, give me the misconception. Everyone thinks the world.
74% of the people who've done the survey got that wrong.
74, right? Okay.
Most have the impression that suicides are becoming more common in the world, as we know. It's certainly interesting because there's so many factors behind it. More and more people nowadays talk about mental health, which is great. You know, it helps towards we've made great steps to remove the stigma around it and also increasing the awareness around it. Here's a really interesting fact that I happen to know, a classic one to do with mental health. Did you know that in 2019, so only last year, was transgender considered not a mental health issue?
Really?
By the UN. World Health Organization. Last year, was it then sort of by the World Health Organization to say, yes, transgender is no longer a mental health mental health disorder?
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either until just sort of like doing CPD back in the UK. So it's crazy just to think.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more aware, but we think about any of these sorts of issues. I mean, certainly I think about sort of some of the stuff we've talked about. Certainly maybe in the Western world we wear our emotions on our chest.
Yeah.
Maybe here in sort of in the East, in China, and certainly from one of the conversations we've had, maybe in the office, where we're saying, emotions are always kept back.
Yeah.
They're always a lot more reserved, but they're always presenting themselves very happy and very, very pleasant, very cheerful.
Yeah.
So it's
So how have they changed? They've got better then, yeah?
So it's gotten better. It's decreased by 25%.
Okay.
So I was right.
Yeah.
You were wrong.
Well,
not to rub it in.
No, rub it in all you like. It just that's an interesting one, and well, let's move on then. So suicide rates have gone down, which is marvellous, isn't it? So there you go.
Okay. Low-income countries of today had a life expectancy of 44 years back in 1970.
Right.
What is it now?
So 1970, it was around early 40s. Yeah.
So 44. So the age of 44 was life expectancy in low-income countries in 1970.
Yeah.
What is it now in those low-income countries?
Yeah.
40 years?
Yeah.
50 years?
Yeah.
Or 60 years?
All right, I've just had enough of this gapminder crap. It's 60 years, isn't it? Come on, move on.
It's got to be.
Move on.
It has to be 60 years. Yes, it's 60 years.
I think also, how many people got that wrong? The statistic afterwards?
86.
Yes, these 86% of people probably come onto the website for the first time, have a stab at this question. I don't think they've been going through them methodically like we have in China Jedi, fine combing through the crap. And
you've got a good point. And certainly when I initially found this and I did the first couple of questions to try it out, when you do the general quiz, it takes like the first question of each one. Yeah. Instead of jumbling it all up.
Okay. I see.
It jumbles it all up.
Yeah.
So where we've been going it through goal by goal, and we start to notice the patterns. Yeah. Obviously, for those sorts of people. But we are also discussing it in a lot more depth. It's not like every single person who's doing this survey is sitting there and having a half-hour conversation about it.
I think we have to be open-minded about this, and I'm sure, and it's like they say, statistics. I mean, with statistics, you can bend them in many ways, can't you, to suggest and to agree with a trend or some sentence that you want to give, some rhetoric. So in this case, things are getting better again. Suicide rates are down. People are living longer.
Absolutely.
Yes? What are they living in is another question, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean... wow, reading this misconception, I'll try my best to summarise it because there's so much here.
All right.
So people on average live 20 years longer in poor countries today, mainly because fewer children die. Yeah. So this is the thing we now actually, we think about all those Africa adverts and all that stuff, those, they've got clean water, they've got flowing water, etc.
The basics, yeah. 5
years ago, almost 1 in 5 children died before the age of 5. And today, it's less than 1 in 20.
Wow.
So there have been amazing improvements. And also we think about diseases such as, malaria jabs, etc., whatever it may be, hepatitis, all those. And basic education, vaccination programs, mosquito nets, pregnancy checks, public health infrastructure, sewage systems in cities, and clean water and safe toilets.
I mean, what this says is where's the United Nations headquarters? Is it Brussels? No, that's the EU, isn't it?
No, isn't it in Switzerland?
Yeah, where's the United Nations headquarters, listeners? They can't speak back, can they? United Nations headquarters. I think you're right. Come on, it's got to be in some... Its headquarters in New York City. There you go. Designed by a board of architects, led by Wilson. Okay, yeah, so it's headquartered in New York City. Would you believe that? And, I'd just say maybe we should all flock there and bow down to this wonderful organisation that is just pulling everybody up magnificently, not doing any mistakes at all. Everything is rosy and shining out of where. So let's move on, Alex, to question number 3, shall we? God, I'm just going to leave the studio today feeling so happy I'm just going to go around kissing people.
I just want you to read the question that I've just selected.
Oh, can I trust the data? Well, yes.
It seems right up your alley.
Even though there are some uncertainties since the data used to estimate life expectancy is sometimes collected as seldom as every 10 years. Data is more reliable for countries that have civil registration for... Yeah, so, okay. Anyway.
It's exactly as what we've discussed. I just find it quite interesting.
Food for thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is what we like to discuss on China Jedi. Question 3, buddy.
Yeah, of course. I do find it interesting that they actually include that question in all these sort of questions, but at the end, while there's obviously, a bit about the misconception, why are people having this sort of misconception? Yeah. And then at the end, can I trust it?
Yeah, it's good that it
sort of does raise that question.
Rounded argument, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rounded thought scheme.
Okay, so question 3. In which countries are people on average least satisfied with their lives?
Ooh.
Low-income countries.
Okay.
Middle-income countries or high-income countries.
Wow.
So are we saying... So yeah, which countries are people on average least satisfied with their lives?
Okay. High income, low income or middle income?
Yeah.
Okay. Difficult question. I mean, you got the classic, haven't you, that lots of rich people and stuff aren't happy. They have everything you think you need to be happy, but
there's also that classic argument. There's that classic joke and all that stuff. Oh, first world problems. I can't get my coffee and all that. There's those sorts of jokes around it. I could see it as any of them. Because at the same time, you could say, well, low-income countries, they've learned to live with what they don't have, and they've adapted to life, etc., and they move on. But we also think about, because we're also thinking about good health and well-being, think about that first question where it was to do with suicide rates.
Yeah.
I could, it's fair to say, obviously maybe this is me being ignorant now, I would say high-income countries have larger suicide rates. So does that then relate to least satisfied with life?
Is that the word, least satisfied, yeah?
So least satisfied with their lives. That's what it says. On average, least satisfied with their lives.
I'm trying to also think of the agenda of the United Nations, maybe even Gapminder here, about, painting everything rosy.
There'd be a fourth option then, none.
But yeah, which one would you think would be rosy? Where do they want us? They probably want us in the middle, don't they? So I reckon potentially the middle ground is what they're going to suggest is the most satisfied. So it's not. I'm going to get rid of that because everyone wants us to fudge into middleness and oneness. There's unity within just being the same. Okay. So, which of course I completely disagree with. Unity is all about diversity, and Attenborough. Researchers need to bring Attenborough in. Talks about the lack of diversity now in nature, and it's obvious its links into society and the problems we're having with weather and things like this. So I'm going to go with. I think they're going to say that being too rich might be a problem because they don't want us too rich.
That's what I think.
Too rich means could have too much power. Money brings power, and I think United Nations are creating this ideology for future generations to attach to these 17 sustainable goals that we're talking about. I think they probably want us in the middle. So I'm going to go with rich.
You're going to go... I would agree with that.
Okay.
I think that links on what I was saying with the first one.
Go on. Yeah. Let's see.
High-income countries. We're wrong. Oh.
Great. I love it. Yeah. Come on.
So...
What is it?
Low-income countries.
Okay, so it's low.
Which makes sense because it's tough
sense.
Though. But then how are you basing this decision? Are you comparing it? Because if we compare with our neighbours, that's not... it's tough to say because how are you going to base it on terms of satisfaction? Do you go around person to person and say on a scale to 1 to 10, are you happy? What's their content? And everyone has an interpretation of their own of that question. So it says, many of the rich are unhappy, but there are unhappy people in all incomes, but generally in richer countries there are fewer of them on average. So on average, it's tough to say.
I think this is a very difficult question. I think there's too many parameters. I don't think they should ask a question like this, quite frankly.
We're saying...
It's a stupid question.
On average, people in richer countries report higher life satisfaction than those in poorer countries.
But those people in higher income countries probably have time to think about doing a feedback form or some way where they collect this data. Whereas, poverty, people there, I mean, many of them might not even access to this. Where do they get this data from for this? Go on.
I'm glad you've raised that question.
Because I smell a fish.
I found a link.
Go on.
And it links to their sources.
Are you looking to further your career in education? Teach Now offers a convenient online teacher preparation and master's degree program completed anywhere in the world.
Reach now for Teach Now. Ain't no time for defeat now. Teachers get off your seats now. Future generations need you now.
Work with people all over the world in a collaborative, activity-based teaching environment.
To learn more, visit teach-now.edu.
Expertise that is really outside of the box.
So this is going to be, obviously we don't have time to sort of discuss more about
Source
it.
me up.
But they've linked a few different articles, and I mean, there's a lot of information to try and paraphrase. Our World in Data is something that's been referenced.
I think this
World
question.
Happiness Report. There's loads of different.
Yeah, there's dodginess here, mate.
I mean, they've included a link to talk about different sources that they've come from. So I think there's an element of truth, but as you were saying, Himalayan salt.
I think so on this one, yeah. So anyway, if you answered medium, low or high, listeners, you will get a point. Everyone's a winner.
In our books. In our books.
Everyone's a winner, even if you're an idiot. Question 4. Moving on.
So question 4. Worldwide, how many babies are born with a trained health worker present?
Oh, right. Worldwide, how many babies are born with a trained worldwide health worker?
With a trained health worker present.
Very, of course, very useful. And having a baby, to have someone around who knows what they're doing. So
you'd hope.
Yeah.
Less than 30%, around 50%,
Yeah.
or more than 70%.
Right, the last one, isn't it? Come on.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be. Last one.
Come on. United Nations. Pushing forward. Yeah.
Cool. Done.
Okay. Yeah. I mean...
Any surprises?
I don't.
87% of people answered wrongly. When educated health staff help deliver babies, it massively reduces the risks to for both mothers and babies. I mean, we know that's the case. We know the importance of healthcare. There's a video. Ooh, maybe for another. That's
yeah. Well, podcasts don't do too good with videos.
I gather.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, they don't. They just don't work.
Oh wow! I mean, the questions we've got here. So apparently, So most people believe that a majority of the world's population are stuck in poverty with no access to basic healthcare. This was true 50 years ago.
Right.
Basic healthcare is inexpensive today, and most mothers get help during childbirth, which means that fewer mothers and babies die. I mean, this is just stating what we know.
The answer was 65%, did you say?
So we were correct. So it said
over 65%.
So here we go. So it says globally, 81% of births are attended by a trained health worker.
Okay, 81%.
So that's what they're saying, and the sources are UNICEF and WHO.
Right. Well, I think it could be better. So let's move on. And one of these good health and well-being sustainable goals, I'm sure, is to bring it up more to 100%. So
I would strongly recommend the listeners to look through this website and actually look at some of the questions they pose afterwards.
Yeah.
Because certainly, I mean, this one, how can the numbers of assisted deliveries be so high? Why is it important to be trained? Why is it important to have? There's so many questions around.
Get stuck into.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing we could do. And essentially, we could talk about each question for half an hour or so.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to bore everyone profusely. But what I would say is there a question about how many people in the world have access to dolphin births? Does it have that or not?
No.
Well, it's useless then, isn't it? Right, question 5. Row on.
How many of the world's 1-year-old children today...
Well, they've asked them, have they? Yeah, go on.
How many of the world's 1-year-old children...
Gaga, goo, 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 goo.
Do you mind?
Sorry.
Can I continue?
I'm just getting bored of these silly questions. Yeah, go on.
This is a good... I think I like this one.
Okay, good.
How many of the world's 1-year-old children today have been vaccinated against some diseases?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. The ramp-up programme for stabbing little children with with dead viruses or even alive viruses has gone well out of hand. And any parents out there, I'm sure, would at least talk about this with me. And if I look at the schedule for our kids, and we haven't given them all of them, we just did the main ones that have been around a long time: hepatitis, polio, the MMR's one, the measles, mumps, rubella. You're looking now over 30 within the 30 year. I think that's ridiculous. I really do. Our world might be dirty, and it could be a terrible place. But for me, I just think
it's a precaution.
Getting out of hand.
I mean, it'd be curious to know whether that's going to be rolled out, whether the COVID vaccine will be rolled out to newborns.
Well, it's coming. My question is, it shouldn't be mandatory. I think that should be up to every parent to make that decision. The problem is when we're going to get into, you must take this injection, you must put this in this body, otherwise you won't be able to access the echelons of society that you may want to. I think that is an interesting point that another podcast could certainly focus on. That's where I think it takes away our fundamental free rights of being a loving, good human being.
Yeah. Answers then? So we've got less than 20%, around 50%, or more than 80%.
It was definitely more than 80%. I mean, they'll go on this being a brilliant thing. We stab a load of kids with loads of stuff to make them keep alive for longer. I mean, that
would be my assumption.
So it's going to be over that. Go on, flutter it out.
Green.
Yay, let's keep stabbing babies. Yeah, wonderful. Can I just end this? Can I just put something on this with this big jab debate? Because as a parent of 4, I struggle when I take my child to do the jabs. I just, and I've done a lot of research on this. There is not one worldwide research study out there that has looked in to the deleterious effects of vaccinations.
Really?
There is not one study. And you'd think, wouldn't you, all these people like UNICEF, WHO, United Nations, they've got a bit of cash, right? That you'd think they would do one study, worldwide study, even if it was fake, just to say, yep, they're great, bring more of them, keep pumping.
It's weird though, because when we think about those sorts of studies, when we say, okay, what would the study be though? I'm playing devil's advocate to your question now. I'm sorry, but
well, the study.
I had my injections when I was young, and I actually had a top up on one of them. I think it was like when I was 15 or 16 or so. They found out that I had to do the MMR again because one of them had sort of died off within my immune system. But the fact that obviously life expectancy is increased, and I'm assuming you've also had your injections when you were a 1-year-old and all this stuff, and also, the fact that life expectancy has increased and all these different factors, and we don't actually hear about cases. Obviously, again, mainstream media, I know this is a factor. We don't hear about any cases of, hey, we found out someone's got polio again. It's been however many years since they've got polio.
Yeah,
someone's got polio now. So
so why question it? I mean, I would lead to answer your question. I think there's been a lot of talk, non-mainstream, that there is a link, and maybe a very good statistically strong link, between the rise of autism and the rise of all these vaccinations. Now I just want to go with that headline.
I've heard that intro.
I just want to go weird. That's one headline. One headline, because I think to tackle these, I want to use the word behemoth, these behemoth kind of ideas. I think you need to go in sometimes, use the pun, with a needle, with a blade. And this one would be pointing at that, autism, the rise of autism, even maybe the rise of ADHD, all these things as teachers we start to hear a lot more of in society. Just drug them up, give them this, give them that, or give them an injection perhaps. I just like to see it. I'm on the fence, but I want to see a proper study that's not funded probably by people that actually put those things into the vials that then go into the body. A neutral study.
It's interesting. I mean, you're saying pumping them full of drugs and stuff. I know it's less common. I know certainly my teaching experience in the UK, it seems less common. Like you hear about autistic children and they don't necessarily need regulated medication, all this stuff, like even for ADHD and stuff. But certainly when I was a camp counsellor in the US, they had to have that. They were receiving ADHD.
Did you say camp counsellor?
Yeah, I did Camp America when I was.
Camp right. I thought you were a counsellor who's camp.
They called them camp.
Not that it matters if you were a camp counsellor.
That's the terminology they use.
Oh, I see. So if you are...
You're basically
So you're
looking
a
after
camp,
the group of kids.
so if you were a gay camp counsellor, you could be called a camp counsellor. Which is going.
This was where you wanted to go with this point.
So I'm just injecting something silly into it. But no, make your point, because the researchers are saying we're moving on, and we need to come back into camp counsellor. You need to bring this into question number 6, please.
That was some tangent.
Question 6 must be all those bloody injections I've had. Question number 6.
Oh wow! Oh, okay. So I actually have knowledge. I have some knowledge on this. So worldwide, there are around 38 million people living with HIV.
38 million, yeah.
38 worldwide. There are about 38 million people living with HIV. How many of them get anti-HIV drugs?
Oh, cripes. Go on.
Less than 15%, roughly 30%, or more than 50%. So I do know a lot about HIV.
Yeah.
I had to, at some point in my life, I had to deliver an assembly on it.
Right, okay.
Just because, and there is a lot of misconceptions in education around it. There's actually a lot of misteaching, particularly I found out at my last school. Unfortunately, again, it was in the UK, so a lot of my experience is going to come from that. My last school, the science team, they didn't actually have any knowledge about all this stuff. So when we had someone come in who was talking about all the specialists and all these drugs, etc., how it all works, this was the first time they received all this information, and what they were told in science was different. In science class was different. So I am really interested to know, again, it's the sort of source element here. But well,
it'd be good to know if you think, because I think the answer is going to be over 50%, because they're going to want to say everyone's being looked after. Although I think that's not good enough.
I would agree with the more than 50%, because the rumour has it, if everyone who has HIV has it, if everyone who's got HIV at the moment, the potential is that HIV will be eradicated within the next generation because of the whole the suppressive drug, where you basically take a daily tablet and it suppresses the HIV disease, and basically after 6 months you can have unprotected sex and you cannot transmit it.
Just a macro view on this. We're talking about this question, we're talking about a virus, right?
Yeah, so...
Another big, bad virus that's killed a lot of people, ruined a lot of people's lives. Along comes another virus. This was in the 80s, of course, when this went big. Yeah. And now we've got another virus coming. Well, when that virus gets finally obliterated, which is a brilliant thing, what's the next virus that's going to come along?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
There hasn't been one, has there? Tongue in cheek on that. But my point on this, on the AIDS thing, is I think it's going to be more than 50%. But what really annoys me, and they've left it to the 6th, and we're coming to the end of the podcast, is they should have an answer D, which says more than 80%. And then you would realise that maybe things aren't that rosy. But the fact that it only allows you to say more than 50% suggests that that's a good thing. More than 50%. It's not a good thing. Everyone with HIV, poor people, middle class people, rich people, they should have access to suppressive drugs to get this totally terrible virus down from their life.
You're absolutely right, because when we say this, we're saying 38 million people today living with HIV. More than 50% of that. So we are saying 19 million people, less than 19 million people today living with HIV don't have access to anti-HIV drugs.
And they're expensive, I've heard, right?
That is if the last point is correct.
They're expensive, right?
It depends on where in the world you are.
Which is wrong. Quite frankly, it's wrong. It doesn't matter where you are in the world.
I wish I knew about this. I wish I knew if it was the case in the UK. Because quite frankly, I would imagine in the UK it should be covered in HIV by the NHS.
Is it really?
It must be though.
A lot of countries aren't though, are they? But then the NHS stands itself alone.
Yeah, obviously it's more than 50%. Wow. Apparently 85% got that wrong, which I think emphasises the misconceptions around HIV.
Well, they'd have thought a lot less people getting the medicine.
I mean, again, I'm sure off the podcast we can have a conversation about it. And there's so much information. Like, I was blown away when I found out a load of this stuff.
Well, we're definitely not going to talk about that now.
Of course, because I know.
Right. So the answer is it's more than 50%. Well done, United Nations. Again, you're helping everyone. God, we've got to get a ticket to New York. Oh no, we can't because of some virus that's stopping us doing that. But maybe soon the United Nations will sort it out. Anything you want to say on this before we go, Alex? It's Christmas time. People need to go and have fun.
Oh, here's a good question. Shows how relevant.
Yeah.
Will the coronavirus pandemic impact HIV treatments?
Oh dear.
Unfortunately, it will, because it's obviously impacting those with cancer treatments, impacting everyone at the moment, because you can't be in hospital.
Imagine the money.
I mean, I remember
they can make with these new amazing vaccines they're coming up with.
Well, before I left the UK to come to China, I had to phone all my tutor group to say I was leaving. Phoned a student to say, check in, and I was chatting to their mum. Student's got epilepsy and a brain tumour. They had a brain scan booked for basically round about the same sort of time as lockdown started in the UK, which was March.
Yeah.
When I spoke to them I think in July, they said obviously the scan was cancelled, and they have no idea when the follow-up scan will be booked. And certainly from those conversations that I had with that parent over lockdown, it was imperative. It was really important for them to get that scan, and that's just something simple for a child's development. That's just thinking specifically to epilepsy in a child's development. Quite frankly, there's so much. So every virus, every form of treatment is obviously impacted by COVID.
Well, anyway,
I don't know how you feel. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, no. I think we'll call it an end there, but less of that. I mean, we can have many more talks, as I'm sure those listening now have had about the pandemic. The global pandemic. But for now, let's leave it at that. Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year. Hope we've cleared up some misconceptions and you don't feel you're too ignorant, like the both of us. But till then, it's a goodbye from Alex, myself, Bob Geldof and David Attenborough and all the research crew. Have a wonderful holiday. And if you listen to this after the holiday, have a wonderful day. This is China Jedi, people.
If you're an English-speaking teacher from anywhere in the world and you have a bachelor's degree but need an official and accredited teaching license to get a job, get a visa to teach abroad, or most importantly to learn all those things you wish you knew before you stood in front of 30-plus students, then reach now to Teach Now and secure a professional US District of Columbia license in as little as 9 months.
Online in no time, low cost, high quality. Teach Now. Get in the game. Immediately receive a $100 discount off your tuition by signing up to the Teach Now program via the link www.teach-now.edu/China Jedi.
May the smile be with you.